Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me get my first 1,000 subscribers. It's one click for you, but for me it's a huge encouragement and motivation. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's go. Michael was just about to head upstairs and call it a night when he heard the soft but deliberate sound of her footsteps on the staircase. Turning his head, Michael saw Olivia coming down, dressed in tight leather pants and a light, shimmering blouse covered in sequins. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and her eyes were burning with anticipation. It seemed as if she had shed several years in an instant. She wasn't the exhausted wife he saw every morning over a cup of coffee. "Where are you headed?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral, though he felt a sudden pang of anxiety. Out of nowhere, his wife was dressed to kill, full makeup on. Was she going to a friend's house? Or maybe some kind of party? Olivia reached the bottom step and stopped, looking him straight in the eye and smiling as if she had a surprise ready in her pocket. "You know, Michael," she said, walking closer. "I was thinking, we haven't gone out in ages. You're always buried in work, and I'm suffocating within these four walls. We barely spend any quality time together. So a thought popped into my head, let's go to a club. Just relax, dance, listen to some music, grab a couple of cocktails. Please," she touched his arm lightly, tilting her head. Her eyes were pleading, but her voice had a commanding edge. Michael didn't like nightclubs. Hell, he hated them. The music was always too loud, the dance floor was a crush of bodies, and the crowds were full of tipsy college kids partying like there was no tomorrow. But in recent months, he realized he mostly saw his wife through a haze of sleep deprivation and brief evening exchanges. Work, bills, the monotonous grind. They had let their life turn into a series of unmet expectations and mutual grievances. Maybe she really did need to let off some steam. And honestly, maybe he needed to shake things up a bit too. "A club?" he asked, looking over her outfit. "It's already 9 p.m. The night is probably just getting started out there. And besides, we aren't exactly college students anymore, Liv." He caught himself wanting to say this isn't for us, but bit his tongue. She laughed. Her laugh sounded light, hopeful, and just a little teasing. "So what?" she parried. "I feel young, I really do. And I want to remember what it means to be alive. To dance until my feet hurt, to not think about tomorrow, just for one night. Please, let's go. No buts. I got this idea in my head, and now I want to make it happen." He hesitated. He was too tired to put up a real fight. And the sight of her glowing eyes always got to him. Once upon a time, she knew exactly how to ignite that spark and passion in him, at any hour of the day. She probably still could. Maybe this was the only thing that could drag them out of the swamp their domestic life had become. "All right," Michael said, slowly lifting himself off the couch. "Just don't you dare laugh when you see my rusty dance moves. I'm a little out of practice with the nightlife scene." "Oh come on," she smiled even wider.
I promisa, no roasting.
"Just dancing, just a little celebration. Thank you for saying yes." And just like that, a ray of hope for change appeared in their home. Michael hurriedly changed into something more appropriate, black denim jeans and a button-down shirt he had bought on sale at Macy's and worn only a handful of times. He pulled out a blazer to look a bit more stylish, but then decided a leather jacket would fit the vibe better. He checked himself in the mirror, trying to gauge if he looked like a total bore. He allowed himself a small thought, maybe it won't be so bad to have a good time. Finally, they both walked out of the house, got into the car, and headed toward that specific club Olivia had been casually mentioning for weeks. Flashing neon signs, a heavy bass thumping right in his chest, a line at the entrance. Michael stood next to Olivia, feeling the music pouring out of the open door, almost drowning out his thoughts. The air smelled of cigarette smoke from the people huddled near the entrance mixed with expensive cologne. Girls in sky-high stilettos, guys in tight t-shirts, men and women of all different ages. Phone flashes flickered in selfie mode, some people were already unsteady on their feet, and it wasn't even close to midnight yet. Same old story, he managed to think before the bouncer barked at him, checking IDs while looking over his shoulder at the crowd. Wristbands were slapped onto their wrists, they got the entry stamp, and suddenly they were inside the churning space where it was impossible to tell where one sound ended and another began. Everything blended together, the bass, The strobe lights, laughter, conversations, the DJ shouting over the speakers. "Well, do you like it?" Olivia shouted, trying to scream over the music. Michael just nodded and shrugged, signaling that he needed time to adjust. He followed her, weaving between groups of dancers. Internally, he felt a bit clumsy, like he had been yanked out of his comfort zone. But Olivia was literally glowing. Her eyes darted around the dance floor, catching the rhythm, her hips already swaying. It seemed like she was about to break free from his hand and merge with the pulsing crowd. "Should we order cocktails first?" she yelled. "You need to loosen up." He thought a cocktail definitely wouldn't hurt, and squeezing her hand, he led her to the bar. The bartender, snapping a shaker, quickly poured them 2 cocktails, names Michael didn't catch. He didn't care, he just wanted to take the edge off so he wouldn't look like a wet blanket. They clinked their glasses and took the first sips. The sweet alcohol spread warmth through him. Michael suddenly felt a rush of light euphoria. Maybe it really wasn't a bad idea to disconnect from the daily grind, at least for one evening. "Not bad," he said, winking at Olivia. "Told you," she smiled at him. "Thanks for coming. Let's go dance?" She literally dragged him by the hand onto the dance floor. The crowd moved in time to the rhythmic tracks, beams of light glided over dozens of figures, and the air was hazy with smoke from the stage and laser machines. Michael felt his pulse starting to sync with the music. He timidly tried to move his shoulders, but his movements felt ridiculous to him. Olivia looked at him with an encouraging laugh, cheering him on, while she moved smoothly, sensually, completely surrendering to the rhythm. "Just dance, don't think about anything," she shouted in his ear. "Let go of the stress." Michael tried to close his eyes and imagine they were in a different world. And suddenly, the music didn't seem so aggressive. He caught the beat, stopped watching how everyone else was moving. They were both laughing, bumping shoulders, and the embarrassment was gone. A few tracks passed like this, and then faster music started playing. Olivia abruptly let go of his hand. "I'll be right back," she said. "Just stepping away for a minute." He nodded, assuming she was heading to the ladies' room. Left alone, Michael shuffled around among the dancers for a bit, but felt 2 young guys, lost in their own moves, bumping into his side. Realizing that standing alone on the dance floor was awkward, he stepped back and made his way out of the crowd. He finished his drink, feeling the alcohol add a lightness to his body, but he realized he wanted some cold water or maybe another cocktail. He looked around, but Olivia still hadn't returned. 10 more minutes passed. The music shifted, people around him churned, laughed, spilled drinks. Michael thought it would be a good idea to refill his cup and look for his wife at the same time. He headed back to the bar. Pushing through the crowd, he heard an explosion of cheers in one of the zones, but didn't pay it any mind. Only when he had handed the cash to the bartender and watched him mix the drink did Michael feel a spike of anxiety. Where was Olivia? Taking out his phone, he looked at the screen, no messages. It was unlikely she would be gone this long. Taking 2 sips, Michael felt a prick of worry. Maybe she really is stuck in line for the bathroom or ran into a friend, he thought. But why wouldn't she come back to him? He tried to call, but the service in the club was terrible, everything was crackling, the music was thundering, and the receiver just gave him dead air. He started to feel uneasy. However, he decided he was getting worked up for nothing. Olivia was a grown woman, she could find him. Still, he started moving along the perimeter of the club, peeking into different corners along the way. Suddenly, Michael's gaze latched onto a familiar figure amidst the flashing lights. In the thick of the dance floor, where neon beams were flaring up, he spotted Olivia's hair, unmistakable even in this lighting. She was facing away from him, pressed up against some young guy in a white t-shirt and jeans. The guy was dancing, holding her by the waist. Probably just dancing, the thought flashed through Michael's mind, although something inside him stung painfully. He took a few more steps toward them, trying to get a better look, but the shifting crowd kept blocking his line of sight. He had to force his way through, leading with his elbows. When the strobe lights flashed, illuminating their faces for a split second, Michael saw the guy in the white tee leaning in toward Olivia without a hint of hesitation. And he was kissing her. And she was kissing him back. She wasn't pulling away, on the contrary, she was leaning into him. Michael nearly dropped his plastic cup. For a second, he just stood there, unable to believe what was happening. They were maybe 10 feet away, but he felt frozen in place. An urge to storm in and drag her away by her arm flared up, but it was immediately choked by a wild surge of horror, betrayal, and rage. The guy pulled back and whispered something in her ear. Olivia smiled, pressing herself even closer against him. Michael felt the blood rushing to his temples, his chest tightening as if a vice were clamping down on his heart. It only lasted a few seconds. His brain scrambled for an explanation. Is this some kind of sick joke? A game? Am I seeing things? Is she blacked out drunk? But no, her movements and her gaze weren't sloppy. She was dancing with intent. Finally, Michael shook his head, shoved someone aside with his elbow, and in moments he was right next to them, grabbing Olivia by the shoulder. What the hell is going on? He barked. The booming music made normal speech impossible. He had to scream. Olivia recoiled, clearly not expecting to be busted like this, face to face. The guy in the white tee looked at Michael with genuine confusion, obviously having no clue who he was or where he had come from. A flash of bewilderment crossed Olivia's face, followed by instant guilt, and then, surprisingly, annoyance. Before Michael could get another word out, she yanked her arm free and, trying to look as confident as possible, hissed through the noise, "Let's get out of here," she shouted, trying to be heard over the bass. She didn't waste a second explaining anything to the guy. She just grabbed Michael by the wrist and dragged him through the crowd. He stood there in a stupor for another 5 seconds before stumbling after her toward the exit, feeling the deafening music pounding behind him while his stomach did flip-flops. Outside, the humid Miami night air hit them instantly. They moved away from the entrance, toward a spot where the crowd thinned out. Michael ripped his hand away from her grip. What was that crap? He hissed, trying not to attract the attention of the bouncers standing nearby. I saw you making out with that guy. What the hell, Olivia? Explain yourself. She looked at him, breathing heavily from the heat of the dance floor and presumably, the shock. For a moment, her eyes darted around in panic, as if she couldn't believe she had been caught at the scene of the crime. It was just a prank. Just a dance. I don't know what got into me. It was stupid. I was in the mood, hyped up on the music. She shook her head dismissively. Don't make a tragedy out of this, Michael. It's nothing. He clenched his fists, amazed that she could talk about it so casually. Nothing. His voice cracked. Do you think I'm blind? How can you just... Look, let's just go home. I don't want to talk to you on the sidewalk outside a club. I need to process this. She shrugged. Fine, let's go. They didn't say a single word to each other on the walk to the car. Michael drove the entire way staring grimly at the highway, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Olivia tried to turn on the radio a couple of times but then stopped the track, seeing that her husband wasn't reacting. She was clearly uncomfortable, but she held on to a strange bravado, like a teenager caught breaking curfew who has a million excuses ready. They drove the rest of the way to the suburbs in dead silence. It was well past midnight when Michael slammed the front door, walked into the living room, and immediately flipped on the lights. He looked at Olivia standing across from him as if she were a stranger. No matter how hard he tried to calm down, his thoughts were racing. How could she? Maybe I really have become boring. Maybe she misses being young. But why do it like this? Start talking, he threw out shortly. She walked further into the room, sat on the edge of the sofa, and crossed her arms. Michael, look. She began. It was just a kiss on the dance floor. I got carried away by the music. The moment just took over. I wanted to feel some kind of rush. I'm sick of us sitting at home like old people. It's not cheating, if you think I'm sleeping with him or something. I don't even remember his name. She was speaking fast, almost rehearsed, and it made her words sound completely fake. Michael didn't buy that she could just write this off as a rush. Do you take me for an idiot? He asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. This isn't the first time you've heard loud music in your life. But you making out with some kid who looks 25? He's not 25, probably. She winced, realizing she had said too much. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I was excited by the atmosphere, the club, the youth around us. She shrugged and repeated, harder this time, Michael, stop it, it means nothing. He stared at her, breathing hard. He felt sick to his stomach with pain. Her words made it clear, she really didn't consider this a big deal. And now he had to either throw a massive tantrum or try to pull himself together. Indignation and pride warred within him. "How is it nothing?" he asked. "You crossed a line. And now you reacting like this is somehow my fault. Or should I be ashamed that I don't grind on strangers like a maniac?" "I just wanted to have some fun," she said wearily. "Stop making me out to be a monster." Michael realized that continuing the conversation right now was pointless. He was too angry to sort through the details. "Fine," he gritted out. "I need to cool off. Go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." She nodded and left the room. Left alone, Michael felt his throat go dry. He walked over to the pitcher of water, poured a glass, and took a few gulps. His thoughts were spinning. What if it really was just a one-time stupidity? Maybe I should forgive her? But something in her behavior, in her voice, told him it wasn't just about a dance. He knew his wife too well not to notice the slightest insincerity in her eyes. The next morning, they both pretended that nothing terrible had happened. He went to work, she went about her day. Michael felt resentment boiling inside him, which he tried to drown out with rational thoughts. But every time he remembered the kissing scene, it felt like a knife to the heart. Several days passed. The relationship became even more strained. Olivia acted cold, as if she were angry that he hadn't left her stupid little stunt in the past. Michael tried to convince himself that maybe he should look at the details. In their 10 years of marriage, she hadn't had any stunts like this. And yet one thought gave him no peace. When she said it was just a dance, her eyes looked unsure, and her voice sounded hollow. One evening, Michael left work earlier than usual. He had a few things to finish up at home, and he wanted to try to talk to Olivia more calmly. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed a car parked out front that looked like it belonged to his wife's friend, Emma. He definitely recognized the dark blue convertible she had bought recently. Guess they re-gossiping about something, he thought, and after parking, he opened the front door. The hallway was strangely quiet. Usually, when Emma came over, the girls would be laughing loudly, discussing news, or watching movies. But now, there was no sound of conversation. Michael walked into the kitchen, didn't find them there, then checked the living room, and saw a shadow move in the upstairs hallway. He stopped at the foot of the stairs and listened. "You said he wouldn't be back today," came a muffled whisper that clearly belonged to Emma. "I don't have time to hide." "I didn't know either," Olivia replied sharply. "Anyway, hurry up, you need to leave soon." The voices died down. Michael felt his stomach drop. What does "you said he wouldn't be back" mean? What are they even talking about? He carefully took a step back, then walked into his home office, trying to move as silently as possible. He closed the door to create the illusion that he wasn't there. His heart was pounding, a single thought pulsing in his head: they are hiding something. Why was Emma afraid that he was home? About 10 minutes later, he heard footsteps. Through the crack in his door, he watched as Emma quickly came downstairs, put on her trench coat, and walked out, tossing a short bye over her shoulder. Her face read pure irritation. Olivia didn't answer her, remaining standing in the foyer. As soon as the friend left, Michael walked out of the office. His wife flinched. She hadn't expected him to be inside. "You home early," she said dryly, fixing her hair. "Yeah," he nodded. "Did you two have some secrets?" "No secrets," she answered, but her eyes twitched nervously. "We were just discussing girl stuff, you know." Michael didn't say anything. But deep inside, a suspicion had fully ripened, one that wouldn't let him rest all evening. He remembered the kiss in the club, Olivia's reaction, Emma's words. And he realized he had been too naive. Perhaps what he saw was just the tip of the iceberg. In the following days, Michael became more attentive to the details. And soon, his guesses were confirmed. In a conversation with some acquaintances who mentioned one of Olivia's pranks, he found out that she had been to that exact club more than once, and without him. They said Emma often dragged her there when he was away on business trips. If she was going to the club, why hide it? Michael asked himself. But the answer was on the surface. She wasn't hiding the fact that she visited the club, she was hiding that she had a friend there. Possibly the same one he had seen. Just a dance? No, that was no accident. Days dragged on, and the suspicions only solidified. He felt that a lie lay between them, a real tangible thing that had soaked through their family life like rot. He needed to know exactly what was happening, otherwise he risked losing his mind from the anxiety. One weekend, Michael decided he could no longer live in ignorance. He found a way to figure out who the guy was that his wife had been with at the club. It didn't take long. He had a chat with one of the bartenders he knew vaguely. It turned out the young man's name was Jake, and he was relatively new in town. Most often, he was seen with a certain hot woman named Olivia. "Yeah, I remember her, she used to come in pretty often," the bartender said with a smirk, and Michael felt a wave of nausea at the words. Having gathered information about the guy, who, as it turned out, worked at an auto body shop nearby, Michael decided on a direct conversation. He knew he wasn't going to resort to violence, but he wanted to look this guy in the eye and understand, how deep did this connection go? That evening, when Olivia said she was going to a friend's, obviously to Emma's again, Michael drove to that auto shop. The workday was already winding down. Jake was standing near the entrance, wiping grease off his hands with a shop rag. The air smelled of gasoline and burnt rubber. Seeing a stranger, he raised an eyebrow. "Hey, can I help you with something?" he asked. Michael walked closer in silence, sizing up this lanky kid who was maybe 26, 27 years old max. He looked energetic, with a slightly cocky expression, but not malicious. A flicker of wariness appeared in Jake's eyes. "My name is Michael," he said, clenching his fists slightly to steady the tremor in his voice. "I want to talk about Olivia." The young guy's eyes widened in surprise, and he stumbled over his words. "Olivia?" he asked. "From the club?" "Yeah, from the club," Michael nodded. "The one you dance with, make out with, and I don't know what else is going on. Only, judging by everything, there's a connection between you two, right?" Jake shot a quick glance behind Michael, as if looking for an escape route, but then sighed. "Look, are we gonna talk out here?" He pointed toward the noisy garage bay. "Come inside with me, there's an office we can sit." Michael followed him, silently trying to keep a grip on himself. They entered a tiny room where there was a desk, an armchair, a couple of folding chairs, and everything was buried under catalogs of car parts. Jake leaned back against the edge of the desk and shook his head. "If you came here to fight or something, I don't want any trouble," he started. "I came to understand the truth," Michael said, his voice strained. "She's my wife. Did you know?" Hearing this, Jake tensed up even more. "What? Wife? Seriously?" He frowned. "Listen man, no, I didn't know. She never said anything like that. I really did see her a few times at the club. She said she was single and just liked to party. I didn't pry into her life, but we texted a bit. Sometimes she came over. Yeah, I thought we were just hooking up, no strings attached. I didn't know she was married." Michael stayed silent, realizing that this guy might actually be telling the truth. He looked rattled, not like a brazen liar. More like he was blindsided himself. "Why did you think she was single?" Michael clarified. "She could have not been wearing a ring, for example." "Her ring?" Jake laughed bitterly. "She said she just didn't like jewelry. What did I care? I didn't dig into the details. You know how many stories like that there are around here? I'm 26, I'm single, I work, I party. I see a beautiful woman, we dance, we kiss, she comes over to my place. How was I supposed to know she had a husband at home?" Michael closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. She went to his place? This confirmed his worst fears. It wasn't just kisses, wasn't just dancing, they had a full-blown affair. And right now, this Jake guy regretted getting involved, not out of love or affection, but because he didn't want the drama. And yet, the main culprit wasn't him. Olivia had deceived both him and Michael. A pause hung in the air. Inside Michael, a wave of indignation, rage, and resentment was rising. But what was the point of beating up this mechanic? He looked just as duped. "Sorry man," Jake added with a sigh. "If I had known she had a family, I never would have made a move. I don't need problems. This is all wild. Tell me what I need to do. You want me to disappear from her life completely? Done. But I didn't mean you any harm." Michael gave a bitter chuckle. The question isn't for you. She's been lying to me this whole time, and as it turns out, to you too. What does it matter? It doesn't. Thanks for at least being man enough to admit it. I think that's all. Goodbye, Jake. He turned to leave. Jake, apparently at a loss for words, silently shook his head. Michael walked out of the auto shop, got into his car, and sat for a long time with his forehead resting against the steering wheel. Everything was confirmed. This was no accident, no just a dance. His wife was cheating on him deliberately, possibly for months. And that kid didn't even know he was messing around with a married woman. When Michael returned home, Olivia was already there. She was sitting at the table with a glass of wine, wearing a strained smile. "Hey," she said. "I bought a bottle of Chardonnay. Maybe we can have a drink, talk things over." He looked at her with detachment. Just recently, he had considered her beautiful, desirable, loved. But now, all her beauty evoked nothing but bitter irony in him. She was a liar. She was playing on two fields, at the club with a young lover, and at home with a husband, trying to maintain the facade of a normal relationship. "Do we have anything to discuss?" he asked, taking off his jacket. Of course, she continued holding that tight smile, trying to catch his eye. "I want us to forget about that stupid night. We can start over." "Funny," Michael scoffed. "Listen, maybe you can tell me the whole truth? What actually happened?" Olivia frowned. "Michael, I already told you, it was a kiss, just in the heat of the moment. Yes, I love to dance, yes, I'm having a crisis right now, I want to feel young. But I don't want to destroy our family over some nonsense." Her words sounded cynical. Michael felt a spring coiling inside him, waiting to snap. "Then why didn't Jake know you were married?" he asked quietly. "I just came from seeing him." Her lips turned pale. For a moment, her face froze, and Michael realized, she understood everything. And her lie crumbled into dust. "You went to see Jake?" she asked, her voice strangled. "Yeah," he confirmed. "And you know, he at least had the decency to admit he was seeing you. You didn't just kiss once, did you? You went to his place. And you never told him you had a husband, right?" "Michael, I wanted." Her voice trembled. "It's not what you think." But he wasn't listening. It was the moment when all the threads came together in a single knot. The whole picture revealed itself to him: her visits to the club, her friend Emma covering for her, the accidental make-out sessions on the dance floor. In essence, a banal affair that she had been living for some time. "You know," he said, fighting the bitterness and trying not to raise his voice. "I loved you. I actually believed we were just going through a rough patch together. But now I realize you crossed a line. And you would have kept lying if I hadn't dug up the truth." Her eyes filled with fear. She was probably used to him always being restrained, calm, rational, and never making a scene. But she evidently didn't expect that he could just take their marriage and tear it up like a sheet of paper. "Michael," she whispered, "listen, yes, I had a relationship, but it was only because of your indifference. You're always busy, you never pay attention to me. I wanted to feel alive. He's young, passionate, it was like an adventure. But I'm here with you. And you're sure I should tolerate this?" Michael said coldly. "Passion? An adventure? You're just making a clown out of me." She tried to step closer, to touch his arm, but he recoiled. Something resembling desperation flashed in her gaze. "So, what now? You want a divorce?" she asked tensely, as if testing his resolve. "I don't want anything. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore," he said, heading toward the stairs. "Go upstairs, pack your stuff. Or I'll pack it myself and throw it out on the street, you decide." Olivia froze. She didn't immediately grasp that he was speaking quite seriously. Indignation lit up in her eyes. How could you? She wanted to scream, but she realized she had no excuses, not even a convincing argument. "Don't be an idiot, Michael," she hissed, and anger crept into her voice. "It's just a romance, just a fling. You're overreacting." "Am I?" he smirked. "It's just a fling? Then my actions will be just a reaction. I'm not going to live in a house with a woman who hits the clubs, makes out with others, lies through her teeth, and thinks that's normal." He was clenching his fists. Inside him, so much was raging that he could have exploded, smashed something, but he held himself back. Right now it was more important to cut her out of his life once and for all. For a minute they stood in silence, looking at each other, as if trying to understand if there was any way back. Then Michael said coldly, "Go. Pack." She swayed, as if she wanted to rush at him, but didn't dare. Not receiving even a glance of sympathy from him, she turned and headed for the stairs with a frozen, vicious expression on her face. Michael followed her with his eyes, then walked into their bedroom after her. He opened the closet and started silently pulling out her clothes. Standing next to him, she also started frantically shoving things into a bag. "Stop it," she gritted out. "This is my house too. I bought this house before the wedding," he cut her off, "and I have no intention of living here with a—" The word traitor was on the tip of his tongue. But he didn't want to make a theatrical scene. He gathered everything that belonged to her and threw it into the suitcase. She stood there, crying from humiliation, but more from anger than repentance. Half an hour later, a suitcase with her things was standing in the foyer. Still disbelieving that she was being kicked out, she looked at Michael. He stood by the door. "Go," he said wearily. "Michael, are you really kicking me out?" she whispered, sobbing. "This isn't." "Yes." He didn't even look at her tears. These weren't tears of remorse anymore, but rather the resentment of getting caught. "We redone here." She let out a grievous exhale and wiped her tears with her sleeve. She grabbed the suitcase and slowly walked out over the threshold. When she was outside, she stopped on the porch. Michael followed her. "You just wanted to dance," he said, looking her straight in the eye. His voice was quiet, steady, but it held a cold resolve. "And I want to live without a liar." Hearing those words, she bit her lip, either from rage or despair. But he didn't care. He slammed the door. Silence reigned. Michael remained in the house alone. For the first time in a long while, he felt both pain and a strange relief. Pain because he understood, his marriage was destroyed, everything he once loved was gone. Relief, because now everything was crystal clear, no illusion, no deception, no empty hopes. He walked into the living room, which still held the scent of Olivia's perfume, sat on the sofa, and closed his eyes. The scene in the club floated before his inner gaze. The lights, the music, her body in the arms of a stranger. Jake's words, "I didn't know she was married." Yes, it was all over. Maybe in time, it would hurt to remember, but right now he knew he had taken a step he had to take. He didn't want to live a lie. Outside the windows, the night air rustled the tree branches. He caught a phantom scent of cigarettes. Maybe one of the neighbors had stepped out for a smoke. The empty house echoed his footsteps. Michael still held a tiny spark of hope in his heart that someday he would meet a woman who wouldn't lie. But for now, he just needed to process what happened and learn to live on. To live, as he had said, without a liar, without betrayal and constant fakery. He stood up, turned off the light in the living room, his gaze lingering on the family photos where they were still happy. And suddenly, he realized he didn't want to look at those photos right now. He walked over and turned them face down. Let them stay in the past, he thought bitterly. Then he went upstairs, to the empty bedroom, hoping that sleep would grant him a reprieve. Behind the door, where their shared life once flowed, a silence settled in, resembling a fresh start. Maybe not a joyful one, but at least an honest one. 6 months had passed since that night. The humid Miami summer had given way to a slightly breezier autumn, though the heat still lingered on the pavement. Michael sat in the conference room of a law firm in downtown, looking at the stack of documents in front of him. Across the long mahogany table sat Olivia. She looked different. The sparkle that had been in her eyes that night at the club was gone, replaced by a dull, anxious fatigue. Her makeup was a little too heavy, trying to hide the dark circles, and her roots were showing, as if she hadn't been to the salon in weeks. "Sign here," and here his lawyer, a sharp man named Mr. Henderson, said, pointing to the lines with a gold pen. Michael signed his name with a steady hand. The divorce proceedings had been swift but brutal. Since Michael had bought the house before the marriage and had a good lawyer, he kept the property. Olivia, having no steady income and having been proven to be the instigator of the breakup due to her infidelity, which Michael's lawyer had subtly leveraged during mediation, walked away with a modest settlement that wouldn't last her a year in this city. Olivia hesitated before signing. She looked up at Michael, her eyes welling with tears. "Michael," she whispered, ignoring the lawyers. "Are we really doing this? Over one mistake?" Michael didn't look up from the papers. He capped his pen and slid the folder across the table. "It wasn't one mistake, Olivia," he said, his voice void of any emotion. "It was a lifestyle you chose. You wanted to be single? You wanted the thrill? You got it. Congratulations." She flinched as if he had slapped her. She signed the papers with a trembling hand. The punishment for Olivia hadn't come from Michael's revenge or some grand scheme. It came from reality hitting her like a freight train. The romance with Jake had fizzled out exactly 2 weeks after Michael kicked her out. Once the thrill of the forbidden was gone, and Olivia showed up at Jake's trailer with 3 suitcases and a lot of emotional baggage, the 26-year-old mechanic realized he had signed up for way more than he could handle. He ghosted her, blocking her number and telling her to find someone her own age. Her friend Emma, the one who had encouraged the clubbing lifestyle, had let Olivia crash on her couch for a month. But the party girl lifestyle isn't fun when you have a depressed, broke divorcee crying in your living room every night. Emma eventually told her she was killing the vibe, and asked her to leave. Now, Olivia was living in a cramped studio apartment in a run-down neighborhood, working double shifts as a hostess at a chain restaurant just to pay rent. The freedom she had craved so desperately turned out to be a lonely, grinding cage. After the meeting, Michael walked to the parking garage. He felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted off his chest. He unlocked his car, tossing his briefcase onto the passenger seat. "Michael. Wait." He heard the click-clack of heels behind him. He turned around. Olivia was running toward him, out of breath. She stopped a few feet away, clutching her purse. Can we just grab a coffee?" she asked, her voice desperate. I miss you. I miss our home. I know I messed up, but I am miserable, Michael. This world out there, it's cold. Nobody cares about me like you did." Michael looked at her. He remembered how she had looked at him that night in the hallway, calling him boring, calling her affair an adventure. He saw the woman who had humiliated him, lying to his face without blinking. "I know it's cold," Michael said calmly. "That's why people value loyalty. You threw yours away for a cheap thrill." "I can change," she pleaded, taking a step forward. "I learned my lesson." "Some lessons are final," Michael replied. He opened his car door. "I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for on that dance floor, Olivia. Because you won't find it with me." He got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking spot. In his rearview mirror, he saw her standing alone in the middle of the gray concrete garage, watching him drive away. She looked small, defeated, and utterly alone. Michael turned onto the highway, merging into the traffic. The sun was setting over the Miami skyline, painting the clouds in shades of purple and gold. He rolled down the window, letting the warm air rush in. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was excited to find out. He was free. And that concludes our story today. Thank you for watching to the end. If you liked it, please give it a like and leave a comment. Also, we are always happy to discuss any comments you may have. See you in the next video.